with this, please allow me to introduce our first speaker. So it's Greg Miles, who's the Managing Director for Caspin Resources.
Thanks, Daniel, and good morning, everyone, and thanks for coming along and hearing a little bit about the Caspin story. It's good to be talking about exploration again. Really enjoyed the previous session and some of the talks yesterday. A lot of focus on downstream processing, supply chains, logistics. But Caspin is proudly at the pointy end of the mining industry. We're an exploration company, and I think this, importantly, is where the real value is created in this industry. It's through the drill bit, it's through exploration discovery. So for investors out there, these are the sort of companies that you want to be involved in. We're proudly West Australian focused, I guess, at the moment, and West Australian based. 2 projects. We've got a sort of a history or a background in magmatic, nickel, copper, PGEs, but I think we've also got a couple of other interesting aspects to our projects, and this Battery Minerals Conference gives us a chance to talk about those in a little bit more detail. So it's a pleasure to be here talking to you, or to be invited along to speak at the Battery Minerals Conference and give those interesting aspects of our projects a little bit more airtime. So Caspin's been around now for about 3 years, still a fairly tight capital structure, modest kind of market cap, which, I think from an investor point of view, really demonstrates that now is a great time to be looking back at exploration stocks. It's been a very tough 12 months. I don't think there's any hiding from that, but the value proposition for companies like ours has changed remarkably in that time. So for companies like ours that are out there trying to strike a blow, make a new exploration discovery, I think it's an interesting time to be putting your toe in the water, so to speak. So 2 projects, our Mount Squires project and our Yarrawinda project, similar sort of geological similarities, as I said before, magmatic, nickel, copper, sulfide. We probably do have more of a nickel kind of focus, and it's been tough in the nickel space of late. But I was actually encouraged, Daniel, by the CRU's comments yesterday about how there is actually an interesting sort of development on the nickel sulfate and the supply challenges that are going to emerge on that front. So I think the rumours of the nickel industry's demise are probably a little bit premature. I think there's still great opportunities, and particularly for discovery. A lot of the negative comments and closures are about old mines and whatnot. I think the future for the nickel industry in Western Australia is about new discoveries. So we'll talk about our Yarrawinda Brook project first, close to home, just up the road near New Norcia in Western Australia. It's about an hour's drive from my place, out to the project area. In agricultural land, as you can see on the video, we're dealing with broad acre farming in what is a relatively new part of the world to go and exploring for these sort of mineral systems. Everyone has heard about the Chalice story, a fantastic discovery in 2020, an unrecognised kind of system in a relatively unexplored part of the world. Most of this region has been dominated by bauxite exploration in the past. And this is how exploration discoveries are made. It's through recognising opportunities, whether through any number of different ways, but usually the lack of exploration for a particular commodity is a great way to look, a great place to start to look. But more recently, we've got some interesting sort of lithium targets developing as well, and we'll talk about that shortly. So we've been exploring out here at Yarrawinda for the past 3 years, although it's a fairly sort of modest-sized project area, about 400 to 500 square kilometres. But you can't explore everything all at once, and so we are still progressively working our way through the project area. And the Brassica prospect is something that's sort of evolved most recently. It's a sort of a very similar look-alike intrusive target, similar to Chalice's Gonaville deposit. Some great work by our field team to go out there and get on the ground and do some field mapping, go through the historical databases that are still stored on in the mines department, and recognise that all the hallmarks for a deposit are there. So, the right geology, some previous exploration, with mineralisation, albeit anomalous, but some of that drilling is quite shallow, and you can see some of the numbers there on the screen. And that motivated us to go out and do a moving loop survey, a great way to look for massive sulphide ore bodies. And sure enough, we've come up with a couple of really interesting targets, two really good, strong conductors that, combined with all our knowledge from the other data sets, gives us good confidence that these are magmatic sulphide targets. You can see actually on the screen there's three. So, in the interest of disclosure, one of those targets is probably not a magmatic sulphide. The one right on the southern end there. You do have to put a lot of work into understanding what those targets mean. And so we've got two good targets. They sit conceptually in the right sort of part of the stratigraphy, which is where you would start to look for a magmatic sulphide deposit. And so that's really the key to this project, is now advancing those conductors through to drill testing. Hopefully we've put in an application for some government funding. Shout out to the West Australian government. We've been the beneficiary of the West Australian EIS funding scheme, co-funded drilling scheme, up to about, I think it's about reached $500,000 now. It's a great way to help junior explorers like ourselves minimise or reduce the risk of exploring. And so these sort of ways that government can help advance these sort of exploration projects is always appreciated. So the guys are in the process of planning those drill holes, and we look forward to testing those targets later on in the year. There's a number of other targets. Serradella is where we've spent a lot of our work, and we have actually defined a very interesting sort of PGE-rich ore body. Still some targets close to surface on that, including some other EM conductors, all open. So still good opportunities there, and all the way through to sort of simple geochemical anomalies. So Balansa further to the north, yet to see a drill hole. First ever exploration for this style of mineralisation on the project area. Shows all the right sort of pathfinder elements that could be representative of a new nickel-copper PGE discovery. And then, meanwhile, we've also recognised the lithium potential in the project area. And it's, look, the lithium, actually, so let's just digress for a minute. I really enjoyed the Andover discovery case study yesterday. And anybody who saw that would have heard how that discovery was actually initiated through nickel exploration. And so the systems that create these nickel sulphide ore bodies, so fractionation of big magma changes, also leads to the potential for lithium and other associated elements to be concentrated in a fractionated melt as well. And so through just going back through our data set, we've recognised that all the pathfinder elements for lithium mineralisation are actually occurring on our project area, albeit the drilling that we've done to date probably isn't where you would actually go and target. But nevertheless, the larger footprint of what a lithium LCT pegmatite system would look like is actually occurring on our project. And, we're not making this stuff up. Of course not. SQM, the Chilean, major lithium powerhouse, have a joint venture with a company called Tambora Metals, right alongside our project, and they commenced drilling for lithium mineralisation only this week. So there's a plug for Tambora, free of charge. But we're really going to be watching the progress of that project, because I think what we've demonstrated is the conceptual, or the concept for lithium mineralisation in our project area, and it'll be even more advanced if our neighbours can find some lithium mineralisation. So we have to date, a few rock chips. Now that's, they're low-level numbers. But I think the thing you've got to remember is that we're in an extremely weathered environment here in the southwest West Australia. It's a shame that the Atlantic Lithium presentation yesterday didn't really go into the discovery history of that deposit. But the initial, because it's a similar sort of environment, very strong weathering at the surface. Lithium is a highly mobile element in the weathering profile, gets washed away quite easily. It's not until you get underneath into sort of freshish rock that you start to see whether the element hasn't been mobilised, whether you've actually got some potential. So we're actually encouraged by a couple of hundred ppm lithium. We think that's really quite exciting, considering that we don't necessarily have access to the areas that we'd like to explore just yet. So moving on to our Mount Squires project, our completely different environment. Look at that. That's what the desert looks like, folks. Out in the West Musgrave region of Western Australia, one of the last frontiers for mineral exploration in Australia. I think this is where the new elephants are going to be found. BHP are building the Nebo Babel mine just only 10 kilometres from our project boundary. And we've got the strike continuity of that magmatic system onto our project area. But there's all sorts of potential out there. We've got some interesting gold mineralisation. And last year we actually, in the process of exploring for other things, we actually found some interesting rare earth mineralisation. And we'll talk about that in a little bit more detail as well. So nickel copper sulphide is again our main focus here. Most of this area hasn't had a huge amount of exploration for it. So a lot of our work to date has been about geochemical sampling, reconnaissance style drilling, and we've seen some quite encouraging results so far. We have actually found, small amounts of copper mineralisation at surface, which is actually quite rare in this part of the world because, as you can imagine, there's a lot of sand cover, sand dunes and whatnot. So getting bedrock exposure is actually quite rare. So to see copper mineralisation at surface is super encouraging. Obviously, we're relying a lot on our geophysics, and I think really the future here is actually gravity survey. So looking forward to hopefully having some pre-competitive data supplied by the West Australian Government or maybe GA to help us advance the exploration for these magmatic sulphide deposits. But I guess what's more recent news, we've just recently done a deal with Australian Strategic Materials. So for those of you who were here in the previous session, listened to Ambassador Kennedy, she mentioned Australian Strategic Materials. They're the beneficiaries of a $600 million funding agreement through the Exim Bank, a real endorsement for that company. So ASM are one of the leading rare earth developers in Australia. They've been at it for quite a long time, so a huge amount of expertise. And we're really grateful to be able to be partnering with these guys to see if what we've discovered so far can actually be part of the rare earth value chain. Now, there's a plethora of rare earth exploration projects out there, but not all rare earth projects are created equal. We've got a feeling that what we've found to date is something of significance. The style of mineralisation is reasonably conventional, hosted in a monazite, xenotime sort of style of mineralisation, which should be able to be processed reasonably easily. So our agreement with ASM allows them to undertake the test work using their knowledge, their IP, grown through years of experience on the Dubbo project in New South Wales. And so hopefully we can be the beneficiary of that. And if it does prove successful, then essentially we've got an entire province locked up ourselves, a whole new rare earth province, which is really exciting for a company of our size. And it's really all about the heavy rare earths. That's the key difference. Dysprosium and terbium, they're the high value rare earths, critical for magnets. So we're coming into the field season now for Mount Squires. We'll be on the ground with looking again reconnaissance type work for nickel and copper mineralisation, whilst the work on the rare earths goes on in the background. There's quite a vast test work regime, a metallurgical test work regime in the planning, and that'll be followed up by some drilling to gain more samples and extend that mineralisation. The mineralisation at the moment is already demonstrated over a few hundred metres. We think it could be open over thousands of metres. So looking forward to testing that, and also at the same time testing the gold potential within the project area. So that's Caspin, ladies and gentlemen. I think we're a pretty exciting junior explorer on the ASX, reasonable sort of good value proposition at the moment, and we're out there and we're having a crack. Thank you.